Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Nun Ches Amud Beis, 58b of Maseches Kiddushin. We are starting 3 lines down on the page, and Be'ezras Hashem we will be finishing the second parak and beginning the third parak in today's shir. So, starting 3 lines, the Gemara was discussing the concept of Tovas Hana, the ability to give something to somebody. In particular, we were talking about a Yisrael's ability to give truma to a Kohen, and that Kohen might then like that Yisrael more. Or a Yisrael who will give Meiser to a Levi, and that Levi might like that Yisrael more. So the question is, does that have a value to it? The ability to give something to someone, can we put a monetary value on that? So the Gemara says, the Gemara in last week's Amud brought it up sort of as a question, and the Gemara says, Nema kitanai. Let's suggest that this is actually a machogas tanaim. This is disputed by tanaim. Hagone, because the Mishnah says, Hagonev tivlo shel chavero. If a person steals tevel from his friend, tevel is a pile of grain that has become obligated in separating truma for the Kohen and meiser for the Levi, but you haven't done so yet, so tevel is forbidden to consume until you actually separate those out. So let's say somebody steals somebody else's tevel. So what does he have to pay him back for? So the Mishnah says, Mishalim lo demei tivlo shel chavero. He has to pay back the whole thing. All of the tevel has to be paid back. Divrei Rebbe. That's the opinion of Rebbe, of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. The entire pile of grain has to be paid back. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says, Eino mishalim ela demei chulin shabo. You don't have to pay for all the grain. You only have to pay for the chulin, the non-sacred grain that's in there. But there's a portion in there that is truma, and there's a portion in there that's meiser. And you don't have to pay back for that portion because it never belonged to the other guy in the first place, because he had to give it away to a Kohen or to a Levi. He had no ability to benefit from it. So according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, the ganav, the thief, only will have to pay back for what was only the value of that he took from the guy, and the truma and the meiser portion of the tevel, the pile of grain, is not part of the value that he stole. So the Gemara says, "Ma'ila b'hakam yiflugi." Isn't it that they're arguing about the following? What's the nekudas hamachokas? What is the point of dispute between Rebbe, who says you pay back the whole pile of grain, and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says you only pay back the value of the chulin but you take away. He doesn't owe him for the meiser and the truma that was within the pile of grain. So we could suggest, Demar Savar Tovas Hana Mamon, that one opinion holds that Tovas Hana, the first opinion holds that Tovas Hana, the ability to give something to somebody, has a monetary value. Umar Savar Tovas Hana Eina Mamon, and the other opinion holds that it is not Mamon, it doesn't have any monetary value. So Rebbe, who said that you pay back the whole pile, that's because he held that even the grain has a value, even the truma has a value to it, to the original owner, because he can choose who to give it to. So the ganav would have to pay even for that truma, for taking that, because it had a value to the owner. But Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says that no, it has no mum. We don't see that as having monetary value, and therefore you only have to pay back for the chulin, for the non-sacred portion of the grain, but not for the truma and the meiser. Perhaps that's what they're arguing about. So the Gemara says, well, no, you can't, at least, there's no proof that that's what they're arguing about. Because you could say as follows, Dekuliyama tovasana ingamamon. You could say that really they all agree that tovasana has no monetary value. The ability to give the truma to the Kohen that you want, we can't put a cash value on it. That has no monetary value. So what are they arguing about? What's the machokas about? V'hacha b'tvalim shenaflo lo mibeis avi imo kohen. And here the case would be similar to the case that we described last week, where this pile of tevel was an inheritance. But it wasn't an inheritance from just anybody. It was an inheritance from his mother's father, who was a Kohen. But he's a Yisrael, right? So you can have his mother was a Bas Kohen, but she married a Yisrael, so he's a Yisrael. And this was an inheritance from his grandfather who was a Kohen. So the grandfather had a pile of grain, and the grandfather would have to separate out Truma and then give it to himself. And what about and as well, the Meiser, Rashi notes that in the days of Ezra there was a fine placed on the Levim, and the rights to Meiser was actually transferred to Kohanim, and that the Kohanim would receive Meiser. So both the Truma and the Meiser would go to the Kohen, but the Kohen never separated it out. It was still in his pile of grain. He would really have to separate it and then designate it as Truma, and then he could keep it, but it's still Truma, and that would actually mean that nobody else, a non-Kohen, could eat the rest of the grain. Somebody could eat. So it's still important for the Kohen who has a pile of grain to separate out what's the Truma, but he never did that. He just had a pile. So the question then is, how do we look at that pile of grain, which is a mix? It belongs to a Kohen, and it has Truma, but he never separated it out. So there's a concept of matanos shalohurmu kamisha hurmu damyan, that matanos, the gifts that go to a Kohen, such as Truma, even before it's separated, it's as if it's separated. So at least in this case, where it belongs to the Kohen, we can imagine it has already having been separated out, in which case it would be in full possession of the Kohen, and in which case if the grandson now inherits it, so he doesn't have to give it to a Kohen, it was already given to a Kohen. It belonged to a Kohen, he just inherited it. Now he can't eat it because he's not a Kohen, he's a Yisrael, but now that he doesn't have to give it to a Kohen, he's allowed to sell it. So that could be the point of Machlokas. The Gemara says, Kohen. We could be talking about tevel, a pile of grain that was not yet tithed, or Truma was not yet separated, but it belonged to a Kohen, and the Kohen died, his daughter inherited it, and then subsequently her son inherited her, and now the question is, do we view the Truma that's in this pile as if it's already been separated? And the point of machlokas, the point of dispute here could be whether we view that Truma as already been separated. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi held it's as if it's already been separated. And if it's already been separated, that means it belonged to the Kohen. And if it belonged to the Kohen, it was already given to a Kohen. And the grandson who inherits it, it now belongs to him. He doesn't have to give it to a Kohen. He can't eat it, so you have to sell it, but that has a monetary value. If you're allowed to sell it, it has a monetary value. So that's why Rabbi says that the person who's the thief has to pay back the full value, because even the portion of the grain that was Truma and Meiser has a value because he's allowed to sell it. The owner was allowed to sell it. Umar Savar Lav Kamishar Mudamyan. And the other opinion, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, if it wasn't yet separated, we don't view it as if it's separated. It was never separated out. It was never given to a Kohen. When the grandson now inherits it, he still has to give it to a Kohen. He can't sell it. And so it has no value to him because all he can do is give it away. And that we're suggesting, and we're now working in the opinion, we're saying maybe that itself has no value because Tovas Hana Lav Mamon, the ability to give something to someone has no monetary value, and so the thief will not have to pay for that portion. V'ba'isema, or if you want, you could say, Dekuliyama Kamisha Hurmu Damyan. No, maybe everyone agrees that it's as if it's already been separated out. V'tovas Hana Inga Mamon, and they also could agree that Tovas Hana, the ability to give something to someone, doesn't have a monetary value. And the point of machlokas could be revolving around Shmuel. And we should note the case would not be where it was an inheritance, meaning like this. This other possibility says we could agree that matana shaluhormo kamisha hormo damim. Maybe they both agree that even before it's separated, we could view it as if it's already been separated by the Kohen. But that doesn't matter because that's not the case at all. It wasn't a case, we're suggesting that, where it was inherited from the Kohen, the grandfather. Maybe it's nothing to do with that. and also tovas hana has no value. The ability to give something to someone has no value. So if the ability to give something to someone has no value, and it wasn't an inheritance, so he can't sell it, he has to give away the truma. So why would the truma have value? Why would Rebbe say that the thief has to pay back the full value of the pile of grain? The portion that's truma has no value because he can't sell it. So it could be, says the Gemara, that they're arguing, or the argument, the machlokus, revolves around the statement of Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel, because Shmuel says chita achas poteres es hakri, that technically speaking, when it comes to truma, one grain of chita, of wheat, could exempt the whole thing. Because the Torah never delineates how much truma one has to separate. It does say how much meiser one has to separate, and with regards to the meiser here, we would be, according to this answer, we wouldn't be talking about that. Really, Rebbe would agree you don't have to pay for the meiser. We're just talking about whether you have to pay for the portion that would normally be truma. Normally, truma, the standard is, I think, to separate 1/50th if you're generous, 1/40th if you're a little more stingy, 1/60th of the pile. But technically, Shmuel says it could be just wheat. It never says how much. It could be 1/1,000. It could be one grain of wheat could technically qualify for truma. So therefore, Mar Islay L'Shmuel, the first opinion, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi agrees to this, holds of Shmuel, and holds that you could really give away, all you have to do to fulfill the obligation to give truma is 1 grain of wheat. And if that's the case, so then the thief who steals this pile of grain, so now it's time to pay back. And the owner says, pay back the whole thing. And he says, what do you mean? Some of it's not yours. It's truma. That has no value to it. I don't have to pay you. So, this doesn't belong to you. So he could respond, what do you mean? I only have to give 1 grain of wheat for truma. So fine. So you could keep 1 grain of wheat, but basically he has to pay back the whole thing. So that's what Rebbe holds, what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi holds. Umar, lastly to Shmuel, and the other opinion does not hold with Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold with this. He holds that you cannot satisfy the obligation with just 1 grain, and he'd have to pay more. He would not have to pay him for the truma because there's a more significant. It doesn't say how much he holds it would have to be. But let's say 1/50th, so then 1/50th of this grain is truma, and the owner has no claim on it because he has to give it away anyways. It's no value to him. He wouldn't be able to claim that portion of the grain from the thief. V'ibais ema, and if you want, you can say another answer. Dekuliyama les lahu Shmuel. Maybe nobody holds like Shmuel. Maybe both opinions disagree with Shmuel and hold you have to give a significant amount of truma. So then, why would Rabbi Yehuda Nasi still say that you pay back that if it has no value, the truma, and there's a significant amount of truma here, and it has no value to the owner, why does the thief have to pay back for that? So here's the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi to kansu rabbanan leganav. Because the rabbis gave a knas. It's a rabbinic knas. It's a rabbinic fine against the thief. Then really, technically speaking, he's right. The thief could say, I stole a pile of grain from you, but you have no claim on the truma. I don't have to pay you back for the truma. And by the way, I didn't mention, but what he might say is, a Kohen the only person who could have a claim on the truma is a Kohen. And when a Kohen comes along to try to claim it, he'll say, I have the right to choose which Kohen I want to give it to. You can't claim it. Maybe I want to give it to another Kohen. So nobody can actually demand it from this thief. It doesn't belong specifically to anybody else. But says the Gemara, but Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, we're going to give him a knas. We're going to give him a fine that says, even though technically you shouldn't have to pay back the portion that's truma, but the rabbis require him to pay back that portion. Or if you want, you could say another possibility. Everybody does hold of Shmuel. Everybody agrees that technically you could get away with just giving 1 grain of wheat. And therefore, the owner really could demand that the thief pay him back in full, minus 1 grain, but basically in full. And that's why Rabbi says that he has to be paid back in full. But here the reason that Rabbi Yehuda holds that you only get paid back for your chulin, for your non-sacred portion, and not the truma section, that's because the kansur rabbanon lebal habayis. They gave a knas, a fine, against the Baal Bayis, against the original owner. He shouldn't have left tevel around. He had this pile of tevel. That had not had its truma and meiser separated. Well, get it done. Separate out the truma and meiser. You don't leave tevel lying around. Tevel is a prohibited food. And you don't leave that lying around. He should have separated it out. He didn't do that. And in the end, a ganav came, a thief came and stole it. So he wants to say, the original owner wants to come and demand that the ganav pay him the whole thing back, even the portion of truma. Because he'll hold the Shmuel flag and say, well, Shmuel says that technically I only have to give 1 grain to the Kohen, so this whole pile really belongs to me. Pay me back the whole thing. So Rabbi Yosef Rabbi says, no, he does not have to pay him back. We're fining him. We're fining the original owner. He's not going to get the whole thing back. He's not going to get his truma portion back because he didn't separate the truma, and he deserves, to be fined for that, to lose out on that, because he shouldn't have left this pile of tevel grain around without separating the truma and the meiser. Okay, so those are basically 4 possibilities of what they might be arguing about. They might be arguing, again, in this case where a thief steals a pile of undesignated grain. It's tevel. The truma and the meiser hasn't been separated yet. Rabbi says the thief has to pay back the full value of the grain, and Rabbi Yosef Rita says he only has to pay back the value of the chulin, of the non-designated section, the portion that's not going to be truma and meiser. What are they arguing about? The Gemara had 4 suggestions. The first suggestion was they're arguing about whether tovas hanal mamon, whether the ability to give the truma to someone has a value to it, in which case you would have to pay back for that portion. The second possibility was the cases when you inherit from a grandfather who was a Kohen but never separated out, do we view it as if he had separated out and it was already his and therefore it belongs to the grandson? He just can't eat it, but he's allowed to sell it and it has a value. Or the last 2 suggestions were possible kanas. According to Rabbi, maybe we give a kanas to the thief. Technically, actually there was one other, but there were 5 possibilities. The third one was that this question of whether you could get away with just separating out 1 grain of wheat for truma, could be Rabbi says yes, and that's why the thief has to pay back the full value of the grain, because really there's only one little piece, 1 kernel that's truma, so he still has to pay back the whole thing, and Rabbi Yosef Yehuda would disagree with that. Or it could be everybody agrees that you have to give a proper portion of truma, but the question is, do we give a fine to the thief? Maybe even though the thief technically should not have to pay it back, maybe we give him a fine that he has to pay back. That's what Rabbi would hold. And the last way was that everybody would agree that the original owner should receive the whole thing back, but maybe it says Rabbi Yosef Rabbi, we give a fine to the original owner for leaving tevel around. Okay, now the Gemara quotes the Mishnah again. The Mishnah said, Tanan hamakadesh betrumos v'maisros v'matanos. If a person gives Kiddushin using either truma, meiser, or matnos kahuna, the portions of a carbon that go to the Kohen, b'mechatas uve'efer para. And then it says, or he gives the mechatas, the water that's going to be used to purify somebody who is tamei meis, ritually impure from contact or being in the presence of the dead, uve'efer para, and the ashes from the paraduma, which are also used in the process of purifying someone who is tamei meis, who is ritually impure. So if she gives any of those things, if he gives her any of those things for Kiddushin, the Mishnah says, Arezu Mekudeshes, the Kiddushin works V'afal pi, but should say V'afilu Yisrael, even if the man giving the Kiddushin is a Yisrael. So the Gemara says, Vera Minhu, we have a contradiction from a Mishnah in Bechoros. The Mishnah there says, Hanotel schar ladon. If a person takes money to judge, so if a judge accepts money, Dina of Betelim, his judgments are batal, they're nullified. You're not allowed to accept money for judging. Lehaid, if a person takes money to give testimony, Edusa Betela, his edus, his testimony is batal, is nullified. You can't take money to testify. Lehazos ulekadish, if a person takes money to sprinkle the mechatas, the waters of purification, on a person who's tamei meis, or lekadish. Lekadish is to sanctify. That's a term used for putting the ashes of the paraduma, of the red heifer, into the water to create the mechatas, to create the special water of purification. So if a person takes money for either of those, it doesn't work. Meima and meima ara. The water that he sprinkled with is meimar. It's like cave water. In other words, it's considered disgusting. Va'afaro, afer mikla, and the ashes are just like regular burnt ashes. We don't look at that as the ashes of a paradum, of anything special. It doesn't work, basically. If a person takes money for those processes, they don't work. So what do we see from here? So we see that you can't take money for things related to the ashes and the water of purification. So if you can't take money for that process, then it would seem you're not allowed to derive value from these things, and so the Kiddushin shouldn't work. How could this man give this woman Kiddushin using these things? It seems you can't derive any benefit from their value. You can't derive any benefit from them. I mean, if you try, it may even render them useless. So how could you use them for Kiddushin? So Amar Abaye says, Lo Kashya, it's not a contradiction. Kan bischar hava umiloi, kan bischar haza v'kiddush. They're talking about two different things. Our Mishnah, which says that you can use these things for Kiddushin, you could use the waters of the purification or the ashes of purification, it doesn't mean he's actually giving her those things. So he's not allowed to get any monetary benefit from those things directly. It's talking about where he is going to do her the favor of bringing these things to her or to whoever she needs them brought. It's the effort and the schar, it's the effort and the cost sort of doing this job for her, that's her benefit that he's giving her for Kiddushin. Schar hava, it's the schar, the payment for bringing the water, umiloi, or filling up the water, bringing the ashes from one place to another, and the schar, the payment for filling it up, that's what she is, that's the benefit that he's giving her. It's not the items themselves, it's the effort in bringing them here, and that he is allowed to take payment for. And in this case, he's going to say, instead of paying me, I'm giving you this benefit, and that should be the Kiddushin. That's our Mishnah. And kan b'schar hazah v'kiddush. When the Mishnah Bechorah said you're not allowed to benefit from the ashes of the water of purification or the ashes of paraduma, that's the actual act of hazah, sprinkling them, or of kiddush, of sanctifying the water by putting the ashes in. And the Gemara says, Dekanami, you can actually infer this from the words of the Mishnah itself. Dekatani hacha b'meichatas of efer para. Our Mishnah said that he gave her Kiddushin with the waters of purification and the efer para and the ashes of the paraduma. It sounds like they're still separate. He's just bringing them. It's the act of bringing them, of getting them ready, that's the Kiddushin. Ukatani hasam, but over there it says, over there, lahazos ulekadish, that he's actually doing the sprinkling or the sanctification of the waters by putting in So that he's not allowed to take money for. And so Shema Mina, we see from here that we're talking about two different things. So just to repeat again, because I think as I said it, I got a little bit more clear on what's going on here. It sounds like the Gemara is understanding that the Mishnah, our Mishnah, the Gemara was talking about when it says that he's makadesh her with these things, was that he's going to do that for her. She's tmeya, she's impure, and he's going to make her pure, and that will be the Kiddushin. I'll purify you, and that will be the benefit I give you, and that will be the Kiddushin. Ask the Gemara, the Mishnah Bechorah says you're not allowed to do that. You can't take payment for that. So he can't use he's not owed anything for it. That could become the Kiddushin, that value. She doesn't owe him anything, he's not allowed to accept payment for that. So the Gemara answers it's true. You're not allowed to take payment for the actual sprinkling, or even the sanctifying the waters, but the effort of bringing them here, that you could take payment for. And that's what he's giving her for Kiddushin. He's saying, I'll bring these. I'm going to bring the Efer Para, the ashes, or the Mechadas, or the water that's needed. I'm going to, go get it from the spring. So that has a value that he can give her, and that could be the Kiddushin. And that's why it says in our Mishnah that he's giving her the water or the ashes. But in the other Mishnah where it talks about that it's forbidden to get paid for it, that's where it says, over there it says, to actually do the act. That's he can't get paid for. To sprinkle, or to put the ashes in the water, to get the water ready, that he can't get payment for. Okay, Hadran Allah Hayish Mekadesh, we will return to you, chapter 2 of Kiddushin Hayish Mekadesh, and now let's keep moving and begin the third parak of Kiddushin. The Mishnah says, Ha'omer lachavero, if a man says to his friend, Tzei v'kadesh li isha plonis, go and be Mekadesh, go and betroth this certain woman on my behalf. V'holach v'kitshal atzmo, and the friend, some friend, he went and he betrothed her to himself. Says the Mishnah, Mikudeshes l'sheni. It works. She's Mikudeshes to the second guy. Why not? I mean, he went, and instead of doing it for his friend, he did it for himself. The Kiddushin takes effect. And so too, ha'omer li'isha harat Mikudeshes li la'achar shloshim yom. If a man would say to a woman, you are going to be betrothed to me after 30 days, but that language means it's not going to take effect until after 30 days. And somebody else came and gave her Kiddushin within the 30 days, but for right now, from the moment he gave it, Mikudeshes l'sheni. So she's Mikudeshes to the second one, because the first Kiddushin wasn't going to take effect until after 30 days. Before it had a chance to take effect, somebody else came and gave her Kiddushin, so that usurped the second one's ability for it to take effect. So the second Kiddushin on day 3, whatever day before the 30 days elapsed, that's the Kiddushin that's in effect. And therefore, Bas Yisrael Kohen Tochal B'Truma. If the case was that the second guy was a Kohen, and it was a Bas Yisrael who was marrying a Kohen, so before she was married to this Kohen, she couldn't eat Truma, but now she's married to a Kohen, she could eat Truma. Okay, now contrast that, says the Mishnah, with the following cases. If instead of saying that the betrothal, the Kiddushin, should only take effect after 30 days, the man said, May achshav ula'achar shloshim yom, it should take effect from right now, but after 30 days. So in 30 days, I want this to take effect from right now. So then, and then in between, somebody came and gave her Kiddushin, b'toch shloshim yom, within those 30 days. Mikudeshes ve'ena mikudeshes. So there we say she's mikudeshes but not, meaning it's a suffix. We're not sure who she is mikudeshes to. Because on the one hand, you have the guy who said from now, but only to take effect after 30 days, so it should take effect from now. But then in the meanwhile, somebody else came and gave Kiddushin before this one actually taking effect from now, because it's only going to take effect from now after 30 days. So what happens then? So the Mishnah says we're not sure. It's a suffix who she's married to. And therefore she's not allowed to marry anyone else, and she would need one of them to give her a get, one of these guys to divorce her, and then I guess repeat the Kiddushin from the second one, but she wouldn't be able to marry anyone else. If they both divorced her, then she could. But until then. Now, if she was a Bas Yisrael a Kohen, if she was a Bas Yisrael and she was one of these two was a Kohen, but she doesn't know if she's married, which one she's married to, if she's the Kohen or the other guy, or Bas Kohen le Yisrael, or if she was the daughter of a Kohen, and she was eating in her father's house, Truma, but now she's married to one of these guys, so then lo tilcha b'truma, she can't eat truma, because again, either if it seems she's married to one of them, so if and if they're both Yisraels, so even if she came from a Kohen family, she's married to a Yisrael, now she can't eat truma, and even in the case where she was a Yisrael, she was a Bas Yisrael, and one of these two was a Kohen, but we don't know which one she's married to, so she can't eat truma because she might not be married to the Kohen. Okay. Says the Gemara, Ha'omer lachaveir tzeva kiddush. So the first case was where a man says to his friend, go and betroth a woman, a certain woman, and he went and he did the Kiddushin for himself. It works for the second guy. So the Gemara says, Tana masha asa asoi ela shenag bo menegramos. There's a different tradition that just uses different language of a brisa that says the same halacha, but it uses different language. It says, what's done is done, but he acted as a trickster. So the second guy, what's done is done. He's married to the second guy is married to her, but he was a trickster. That's what it says. But our Mishnah doesn't call him names. It doesn't say he's a trickster or anything, or that there was anything wrong with it. It just says he's mikudeshes to sheni. It just says that she's betrothed to the second guy. So the Gemara says, V'tana didan halach nami diktani halach biramos. Now our Mishnah also kind of hints to that he's a scoundrel, because it says, and he went and gave it to someone else. Now that's an extra word. What does it mean he went? It means he went and biramos, with subterfuge, with trickery. That's the idea that he went. It could have just said, a man said to his friend, go and be Mekadesh a certain woman, and he did, and he was Mekadesh her to himself. But it says he went and did it. So that implies like he's when it says and he went, it implies that he's doing something wrong here. Fine. Okay. The Gemara asks, Maishna hacha dekatani ha'omer lechavero. Here the Mishnah says, one who says to his friend lechavero, u'maishna hasam. Why is this different than earlier? We had a Mishnah back on Daf Nun, where the Mishnah said, we actually had a few Mishnahs there, but there it said ha'omer l'shlucho. So we had a Mishnah on Daf Nun, page 50a, where it said ha'omer l'shlucho. Somebody says to his agent, "Say v'kadesh leisha plonis b'makom ploni." Go and betroth a certain woman in the certain place. The kidsha b'makom acher, and he was mekadesh her. He betrothed her, but in a different place. So the Mishnah said it's not kiddushin. If you use that language, if he tells him specifically, "Go and be mekadesh her in this place," and he did it, he was Mekadesh her, but the messenger was Mekadesh her, but in a different place, it's not Kiddushin. But the question is, why over there does it say L'shlucho, to his agent? Umayshna, but over here it says L'chavero. So again, Mayshna ha'acha diktani amar l'chavero. Why? What's the difference? Like over here it says, one who says to his friend. The friend is an agent in this case. He says to his friend, Umayshna ha'asam, top of the next page, what's different over there? Dikatani ha'amar l'shlucho. There it says one who says to his agent. Why does it use different terminology? Says the Gemara, Hacha rebusa kamashmalan v'hasam rebusa kamashmalan. In both places it's coming to teach you a chiddush. It's coming to teach you something novel. Hacha rebusa kamashmalan. Here it's teaching us a novelty. De'itana shlucho. Had the Mishnah said, in our Mishnah, shlucho, that he said to his agent, go and be Mekadesh a woman, and he went and was Mekadesh her for himself. Havamina, I would have thought, shlucho hu dahave ramai, desamcha daite. That we were only, the difference is what we view this person as a ramai, as a trickster. You might say only if he was an actual shliach, meaning he specifically sent him to this woman for Kiddushin, and he relied on him. there he's a scoundrel. There he's a trickster. D'samcha daite. He relied on him. Savar avad li shlichusi. He said, he's my agent. I'm sending him specifically for this. There, if the agent doesn't do it, we would say he's a scoundrel. But aval chavero. But if it was just his friend, delo samcha daite. He wasn't relying on him. What's the difference? What do you mean if he's just his friend? Meaning, if he didn't send him there specifically, if he told him, basically like, if you have a chance, Rashi means if you happen to be in her neighborhood, can you give her Kiddushin? So there he's not sending him specifically for it. So there he's not relying on him as much. So we might have thought we wouldn't view the friend as a scoundrel. It wasn't like as firm of a commitment to go and marry her for the first guy. So if the friend intercepted her, maybe we would say he's not such a trickster. That's where our Mishnah is coming to say that no, even then, Kamash Malan, he was halach. He went, and he shouldn't have done that. So Ema lo lehavi ramai. We might have said he's not a trickster. No, our Mishnah says he's still a trickster. And Hasam Rabusa Kamash Malan, in the case back on Daf Nun, it's also a chiddush or something novel there by saying that he sent his shliach, his agent, de'itara ha'omer lachavero. Had it said there that he said to his friend rather than his agent, havamina, I would have thought chavero hu dekikacha makom acher eina mekudeshes. Remember the case there was that he said go be mekadesher in such and such a place, and the agent was mekadesher in a different place. So I might have said. So had it said, instead of saying agent, it said chavero, so I would have said that chavero, for a friend, if the friend goes to a different place, it's not a good kiddushin. Desavar lo tarach. Because the sender never expected his friend to go somewhere else. So he wasn't, the shlichus, it was unexpected. He never thought he would do it, and he wasn't somech on it, didn't rely on that. The shlichus, the agency would have been, if it was just his friend, if you happen to be there, then be mekadesher. So he's only sending him to go there, but not to a different place. Aval shlucho, but a shliach who's an agent who you're sending specifically, ditarach, who you expect will go out of his way for you because he's working for you. So then, ema ma'ar makom hulo. I might have thought that when he said going Makadesher in that place, that we would view it, he's just telling him where she happens to be. He's not saying you have to do it there. I'm just telling you right now she's in Yehopitzville. But not that you have to do the Kiddushin there. That's what you might have thought. Kamash Malan, the Mishnah comes to teach us, no, even if he was a shliach, even if he was a specifically appointed agent to go, but he said, go do it in Yehopitzville, so if he goes anywhere else to do it, the Kiddushin won't be good. We don't say that you're just telling him where to go. We say he specifically wanted it to happen in that place, and when we learned that Gemara, we saw what the rationale behind that was. Okay, we'll hold there.